In the interest of preserving the safety of our drinking water supply and the health of our environment, and absent conclusive scientific evidence that new natural gas drilling technologies such as high-volume hydrofracking will pose no threat to public safety or public health, the Assembly majority intends today to take up and pass legislation that would suspend the issuance of certain types of natural gas drilling permits in the state of New York until May 15, 2015. The bill, Assembly 5424-A, which I am co-sponsoring with the chairman of the Committee on Environmental Conservation, Assemblymember Bob Sweeney, establishes this moratorium in order to give the legislature sufficient time to more fully review the available data and to assess the findings of the Department of Environmental Conservation once they are released. Let me be clear. The moratorium we are recommending will not apply to the permitting of the drilling of conventional vertical natural gas wells outside of the Marcellus and Utica formations. In addition, our legislation requires that a School of Public Health within the State University of New York conduct a comprehensive health impact assessment following a model recommended by the Center for Disease Control to identify the risks associated with horizontal drilling and high-volume hydraulic fracturing, and to develop a long-term plan for monitoring, evaluating, tracking, and mitigating potential public health impacts. Standing in support of this legislation are several leaders from the Assembly majority, many of whom are sponsors of this legislation. You will be hearing from Chairman Sweeney in a few moments. My colleagues and I have listened to the arguments for and against the new natural gas drilling techniques commonly known as hydrofracking. Wherever you stand on the issue, two facts are indisputable. One, the health and well-being of the people must always take precedence over industry profits, and two, the natural gas locked within the Marcellus Shale and the Utica Shale isn't going anywhere. We're not going to lose it. There is time to study, there's time to act with caution and with thoughtfulness. There is time to listen to and to address the concerns of each and every stakeholder, because right now there are too many unanswered questions. For instance, what research exists on the health effects of hydrofracking on drinking water? Will the resulting release of methane gas into the atmosphere have an impact on climate change? What is the risk posed by the radioactive materials that are brought up in the wastewater during the hydraulic fracturing process? What is the best way to handle the salt-heavy, chemically laced wastewater that is a product of this process? No one wants to harm our environment and jeopardize our water supply, and I am skeptical that fracking can be done safely. However, there is a process. We are eagerly awaiting the findings of Commissioner Martens and the DEC. We applaud the governor for his leadership on this issue thus far and for the caution he is taking to ensure the best possible decision is made. Let me be crystal clear. We are profoundly sympathetic to the needs of our struggling upstate economy. Likewise, we are sympathetic to our nation's energy crisis and to the need to liberate ourselves from our dependence on foreign oil. But we are not going to sign off on any process, no matter how profitable that endangers New Yorkers, threatens our environment, or diminishes the quality of life in our communities. Till we have the facts, no new permits should be issued for natural gas drilling in the Marcellus or Utica shale formations. In the interests of public health and safety, I urge the Governor, as well as our colleagues in the Senate, to join us in enacting this moratorium. It is the right thing to do. And now it is my honor to introduce the chair of our Committee on Environmental Conservation, Assemblyman Bob Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the years, the Assembly has done a number of hearings specifically on hydraulic fracking. And one of them actually was devoted, because we were hearing so much about health issues in all of these hearings, was devoted entirely and solely to health. And we held that hearing along with the chair of our Health Committee, Assemblyman Dick Godfrey. What we heard at that hearing, what I heard at that hearing, was of great concern. And I think that in the time that has gone by, and we've seen what's happened in other states, those concerns have not lessened. They've grown. We've seen the many problems that have existed in other states. We've seen that those problems have not really been addressed through the existing process that is going on right now with the DEC and with the Health Department, although we're hopeful that, the Health Department and the recent comments of the Commissioner are indicative of the fact that they are taking this issue seriously. We wish we knew a little bit more about exactly what they were doing and how they're doing it, but we appreciate the fact that they are referencing health studies that are taking place or will take place soon in other states, and that they are acknowledging that what comes out of those health studies will be a factor in the final decision that is made. And that's what we're asking. We're asking to safeguard public health and protect our natural resources, and emphasizing that that should be the priority. Moving forward without providing those kinds of safety options opens up, I think, the potential for great harm. And it's always better, it's always less expensive to prevent pollution rather than to clean it up afterwards. And certainly we can look at the history of drilling in New York State and see the problems that exist to this day from drilling that was done a century ago. This, we have to recognize, is an industrial activity. There are problems that are inherent in this activity, health problems that are inherent in this activity, and that's a concern for us. And so, we think we have a shot, we have one shot at getting this thing right. We've seen that many other states haven't, and we've seen a neighboring state that had to apologize afterwards for rushing in to hydrofracking and not taking the time to get it right with appropriate regulations. We don't want to go down that path. And we continue to believe that health and safety of New Yorkers has to be the #1 priority before anything else. And therefore, that brings us today to this bill, which we think is a necessary step forward in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Now we'll take questions that you may have on this topic.
Speaker, this isn't the first moratorium that Conference has held a vote on before. What's different about this bill? I know that this one specifically outlines the Utica and Marcellus shale formations, but what's different about this year when it comes to a moratorium?
I think this year it specifically highlights studies that have to be done health-related. It's I think the public is more aware of the health dangers that are involved here. There have been mistakes in other states, and the governor has made it clear that this is a difficult issue, that his department is reviewing comments and regulations and putting off any regulations for a period of time. And I think this all brings it together and says, let's study health, let's study environment, and let's put this off until we have conclusive answers. And that's really the difference. Yeah.
Is it clear that if you were able to get the Senate Democrats to support one of these moratorium measures, that you'd be able to stop the administration? Is it clearly in the legislature's power to stop the administration from making a decision?
Well, the governor still has to sign any legislation that passes both houses. Let's be very clear. So,
let's say you get to the point where you've made your points on this. This doesn't really stop the governor, does it, from making a decision?
it would stop the governor from being able to issue permits, but again, it would require his signature on the legislation in order to put the moratorium into effect.
But the governor has expressed satisfaction, confidence in his administration's process as far as the timeline that they've laid out. What makes you think that he would sign this bill that would essentially put a pause on his own administration?
I think if you have the Assembly and the Senate pass this legislation, it would be an expression of the public sentiment that's out there that the governor would consider in signing this legislation.
At the same time, I mean, we do have the power sharing agreement in the Senate, but the Republican leadership would still have to allow it to the floor. They haven't expressed any interest in doing that before. What makes it different this year?
Well, I think in November of 2010, it was actually passed in both houses, a moratorium.
But that was under Democratic leadership.
I understand. Now it's shared leadership, and there's a majority of Democrats in that House. The independents have indicated support for a moratorium already.
Just wondering how far the Assembly is going to go. Say this goes nowhere, but the governor proceeds with fracking. Would the Assembly block any budgetary items that might be needed to proceed with fracking?
There are no budgetary items that are necessary. Certainly not in this year's budget. Huh?
DEC personnel or anything like that?
There's nothing in this year's budget that affects it. But certainly, if in fact the state went forward, we're not in a position to take away inspectors who might be looking at the health implications.
The governor struggled with this issue, all the missed deadlines to develop the regulations and the environmental impact statement. Do you think this is an issue that he's struggled with to find a firm stance on?
I think he clearly wants to do the right thing. I think he clearly understands the significance of any decision that's made here, and he wants to make sure that there is no impact on the public health before he proceeds.
We understand from the majority coalition to pass this bill. I understand Senator Carlucci has introduced a similar bill.
Yes, I understand that. I don't have any commitments. I don't know what internal commitments they have.
A lot has been made about how the upstate economy needs the jobs, but then there are others who say that the jobs that come in these situations are all out of state. Just your thoughts on that?
Well, but that's not really the issue here. The issue, and the most important issue, is the health of New Yorkers. The hydraulic fracking that will take place here won't impact out-of-staters. It'll impact New Yorkers. That's our concern.
Are you, I mean, by looking for a full health impact assessment from student institution, are you saying that you don't have confidence in the health department's overview, which we haven't seen yet? I mean, are you saying that that's inadequate at this point?
Well, I think scientists have to determine scientific material. That's all we're really saying. And a school of public health, it's public health experts that determine what's in the interest of the public's health.
Speaker, you mentioned sympathy for the economic hardships faced by upstate. Are you sensitive, is the conference sensitive to the fact that most of the people behind you at the podium are downstate and not from areas where fracking might take place?
Yes.
Speaker, what about the EPA signing off on this? President Obama signing off on this. Both of them have said that it can be done in an environmentally sound, safe way.
The EPA is still doing studies on it.
So at this point, you believe that President Obama and the EPA are not pro-fracking or?
I don't know what the president has talked about, and every state is different. Population centers are different. Where the gas supplies in relation to where people live is different. What may be good in one place may not be good in another place. There may not be people living within 100 miles of where you're doing drilling in certain places. So just to say it's okay, it's okay. I'm sure there are parts of the country it is totally acceptable because it's far removed from water supplies and population centers.
Speaker, pro-fracking people note that this has already been under some type of study or consideration for 4 or 5 years now, and they're beyond impatient because of that delay. Does this action indicate that whatever the state has done so far is clearly inadequate?
The state hasn't done in terms of regulating or issuing regulations. The state hasn't done it. They are, as I say, as a department, as an executive branch, they are weighing the very concerns that we are asking be weighed here. We are saying, give it a time. Let it.
5 years.
Correct. And there has been no conclusion. And they have not so far involved health professionals in that determination, and that's what we're asking be done here.
We take it off topic.
Yeah.
UFC officials are in town today. I mean, they've obviously been lobbying your chamber for quite some time to get the mixed martial arts ban lifted. Is this any different from other years? I mean, is that bill going to see a floor vote in these numbers? We
will take it up in conference, and we will do what our conference dictates that we do.
And what's your personal position on it?
My personal position is very mixed on it. On the one hand, I think it's something that I personally do not approve of. On the other hand, you know, I can turn on the television anytime, and it's there and available for my children and grandchildren to watch. So, you know, we're not going to wall off our children from seeing this because it's readily available to them, and if there's a revenue stream, they might as well come to New York and have it as far as that goes, because they can go right across the water into New Jersey and get it.
Mr. Speaker, on mixed martial arts, is your sense that there's an evolution in New York State? In other words, people are becoming more comfortable with it or have over the last several years?
I think it's eventually evolving, and at some point there'll probably be an approval in this state. I can't tell you when.
The head of the Business Council, Hydrofracking, was on the radio today saying that this was a very bad week for business, particularly in the Assembly with the passage of the minimum wage bill and today's press conference. And she said there were only 3 members of the majority conference that would rely on what you call pro-business, that the most of the conference was against business in New York. I was just wondering if you had a response.
I really don't have a response except to tell her that everything we've done to promote business in this state, to promote jobs in this state, working with the Business Council, working with our universities, creating a nanotech center here in Albany that has spawned jobs throughout the state of New York, is the Assembly majority's initiative that have taken place over the years, and it's unfortunate that if she looks at it that way, that she's wearing blinders as to the reality of what's happening in state government. Thank you.